All right, let's just jump right into this one because today's explainer, it covers a story so incredibly cinematic, it seriously feels like it was ripped straight out of a Hollywood screenplay. But I promise you, every single detail we're going to cover today is 100% real. We're breaking down one of the most audacious, mind-bending true crimes in history. This is a heist that absolutely proves reality is stranger and, honestly, way more clever than fiction. We're talking about a bank robbery that was literally executed like a giant magic trick. It's all about misdirection. Just picture the vault after the fact, and this is the note left behind. In a neighborhood of rich people, without weapons or grudges, it's just money, not love. I mean, wow, right? It's almost poetic. It sets this deeply mysterious tone right from the jump. Whoever pulled this off, they didn't just want the cash. They wanted to make a statement. They wanted the authorities to know exactly who was running the show. And to really wrap our heads around how they pulled this off, we've got to go back to the very beginning.
Section 1. The Ultimate Bank Heist. Banco Rio, 2006.
So let's set the stage for what a lot of people consider the crime of the century. Picture this. It's a Friday afternoon, January 13th, 2006. We're at the Banco Rio branch in Acasuso. That's a super affluent neighborhood in Greater Buenos Aires, Argentina. It is a completely normal, average day, right up until 4 gunmen walk through the front doors. In a flash, they kick off a wildly tense hostage situation, trapping all the bank staff and the customers inside. The alarms get tripped, and just like that, the clock starts ticking. Now, when the police respond, they don't mess around. 300, that is the sheer number of heavily armed police officers that completely swarm the building. They've got the bank totally surrounded. We're talking elite snipers from the specialized Grupo Halcon. The whole perimeter is locked down tight. There's no way in, and there is absolutely no way out, or so it seemed.
Section 2. Assembling the crew. The specialists.
Look, you do not pull off a job like this with a bunch of amateur thieves, right? You need specialists. And this eclectic crew, it perfectly mirrors a blockbuster heist movie ensemble. First up, we've got Fernando Araujo. He's the mastermind, but get this, he's not even a career criminal. He's actually a plastic artist and a Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. He literally brings an artist's creativity to the crime. Then you've got Luis Mario Vitetselenis, famously known as the man in the gray suit. He was essentially the charismatic frontman. Next is Sebastian Garcia Bolster, a.k.a. El Marciano, or the Martian. He's the engineer. Alberto Beto de la Torre and El Doc handled the gritty work of hostage control, leaning on the Doc's background as an organized crime leader. And finally, El Paisa, sitting tight down the street as the getaway driver. Every single one of them brought a highly specific, absolutely crucial skill to the table. Section 3. The Hostage Decoy. A masterful diversion. To execute their grand illusion, the crew storms the bank and immediately secures 23 hostages. This kicks off a grueling, 6-hour standoff with the authorities outside. But here's the kicker. They didn't just hold these people captive, they used them as a shield and, more importantly, a totally brilliant distraction. You've really got to admire the sheer psychology at play here. First off, the robbers actually allowed the hostages to call their families. Now, why on earth would they do that? Well, because panicked relatives immediately rushed to the scene, creating these massive, highly emotional crowds right outside the bank. The cops are way less likely to storm a building with guns blazing if terrified family members are watching it all unfold on live television, right? Smart. Second, they released the bank's security guard and a police officer who happened to be inside, framing it as this grand gesture of goodwill. And third, Vitet kept the police's chief negotiator, Miguel Soleo, completely bogged down by demanding things like 6 pizzas and sodas for the hostages. It was all a game. They were just buying time. The dramatic irony here is just staggering. It really is. While the police outside are sweating bullets, deploying snipers, engaging in these intensely stressful phone negotiations, and literally acting as pizza delivery drivers, the robbers inside were entirely ignoring the food. While the cops thought they were engaged in this delicate, life-or-death negotiation, the crew was actually down in the vault. They were using a hydraulic tool called the Canyon Power to systematically crack open 147 safe deposit boxes, stuffing massive bags full of cash. The whole hostage crisis? A complete facade, just to keep the police looking the wrong way. Section 4. Underground Escape. Vanishing without a trace. So after an hour of absolute total silence from the bank, the elite police squad finally decides to storm the building, only to find a bunch of bewildered hostages just sitting there in the smoke. No gunmen, no trace whatsoever, which really begs the million-dollar question. How exactly do you escape a bank completely surrounded by 300 elite cops? I mean, you obviously can't go out the front, you can't go out the back, and you definitely can't go out the roof. Well, the answer is you go down. Here is the big reveal of the magic trick. The police eventually stumbled upon a massive, expertly dug tunnel leading straight out of the bank's basement. The entrance was cleverly hidden right behind some heavy furniture. It turns out the Martian, their engineer, had spent 15 days painstakingly digging this tunnel to connect the bank to the massive storm sewer system beneath Buenos Aires. The crew just dropped into the tunnel, followed these special paint marks on the walls that you could only see with night vision goggles, and calmly floated away under the city in inflatable rubber motorboats. I mean, you can't make this up. And the grand total from this flawlessly executed trick? An estimated $20 million. The exact number is actually kind of hard to pin down, mainly because a lot of those 147 safe deposit boxes contained undeclared cash and assets that the wealthy owners didn't exactly want to report to the government. So the crew floated away incredibly rich, totally ready to retire to the Caribbean or the mountains.
Section 5. Unexpected downfall. Human nature's flaw.
But, as is so often the case, human nature has a funny way of undoing mechanical perfection. The crew made their clean getaway in January 2006. The police literally had absolutely nothing on them. Fast forward a few months, and Beto decides to run off with a new, younger woman to enjoy his newfound fortune. Well, shortly after that, Beto's scorned wife, known as La Turca, gets understandably utterly furious. Driven by sheer jealousy and revenge, she marches right into a police station and turns the entire crew in. Think about that. The greatest heist in Argentine history wasn't solved by some elite crack detective work. It was completely unraveled by a bad breakup.
And the final punchline to this whole grand illusion. This absolutely shocked the authorities during the trials. When the crew was finally arrested, they were staring down massive, heavy sentences for armed robbery and kidnapping. But hey, remember that note, without weapons or grudges? Yeah, it turns out every single gun used to hold up the bank and terrify those 300 cops outside was a plastic toy replica. Literally fake guns. Because they never actually used real firearms, and because they never physically harmed a single hostage, the crew ended up receiving significantly lighter prison sentences. Which really brings us to our final point today, and a question I want to leave you chewing on. Does the perfect crime actually exist, or is human nature always going to be the ultimate flaw? This crew built a mechanically flawless heist. They completely outsmarted 300 heavily armed police officers, they successfully navigated the underground sewers, and they walked away with $20 million using fake guns and decoy pizzas. But at the end of the day, they just couldn't outsmart the simple, messy reality of human emotions and betrayal. It is just a fascinating look at the limits of cold, hard logic when it goes up against the human heart. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.